Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for CLSA's November 2021 webinar with that CAD girl, Jennifer. Just a reminder, if you have questions throughout the presentation, you can type those into the question box or the chat box. We'll try to take those as they come. So if we're not able to get to them, we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. Thank you. Again, this is being recorded and will be posted to the members only section of the CLSA website within the next few days, just like all of our webinars. So feel free to log in and check those out. I'll also email you all a link today or Monday. And with that, I will hand it over to Jennifer. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Happy to be here today. A lot of you, or most of you, are probably new to that CAD girl, so I'll take 2 minutes here just to explain a little bit about my background. So I started in CAD back with DCA, and I think it was AutoCAD 9, not 2009, but AutoCAD 9. I've got a degree in surveying, ended up never practicing because I ended up picking up on CAD. And so I focused there. I have worked mostly in civil engineering design teams, specialized really in CAD standards, field to finish for Carlson, surface modeling on the construction side, and also just design side. I have worked for an Autodesk reseller in the past. I was a Civil 3D certified expert. When I went out on my own, I thought I would be doing training and tech support and that kind of stuff with Civil 3D, and ended up kind of finding Carlson because at that time, and I still believe I am, that is the best product for my customers. I am independent. I'm a reseller for Carlson. I support it, you know, until the day I think it's not the right answer, I will be. So I am East Coast based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. So I do sell it, I do support it. I'll mention just real quickly, Kim and I were laughing beforehand that I do a lot of webinars myself for my customers. I also have some upcoming virtual workshops. I'm calling this a fast track on CAD. So we've got 4 full days. I'll be doing 2 full days, plus a little bit more, but like starting on December 2nd, just really starting with how to draw a polyline, going through an introduction to Carlson, and then we've got surface modeling, and then some advanced survey information on the 14th. And I will skip all that, and let's just get into the presentation. So I am going to be working here in Carlson Survey. I've got 2020 loaded with IntelliCAD. So for those of you that may not be familiar with IntelliCAD, it is a generic version of AutoCAD. So it is kind of open source. It works natively in DWG files. You don't have to import or export. You don't have to convert. And so I think you may be surprised if this is the first time that you're seeing IntelliCAD. You may be a little surprised with how well it matches up. So they do, the developers at IntelliCAD do everything they can to mimic AutoCAD. So what I'm going to do, let's just kind of, I'm going to start a new drawing here. And I have a folder for today, so I'm just going to put today's date. Okay, we are going to get this to a plotted sheet, so I'm just starting out with a horizontal scale of 50, and I'm going to go ahead and set my projection and zone for this data set. This is typically a about an hour and a half presentation, so I have cut some stuff out of the middle. If we have time at the end, I will come back around to it. So I will tell you what I'm skipping, and then if you have questions, like I said, I'll try to add that at the end. So let's look at the point files that I am going to be starting with here. And let me explain a little bit about kind of my objective here with what I'm going to show you. So this is a survey project from start to finish. I'm going to start by importing these points from a text file, which I think is fairly typical. We are going to enter our deed. We're going to do some translation so we can get our deed over on top of our survey data. We are going to do labeling and, like I said, kind of finishing the sheet. If I have time, I'm going to touch on Carlson Field to Finish, which is the feature that will draw everything on particular layers, insert symbols, put them on their different layers based on the descriptions. If we have time, I will get into some just creating an existing ground surface. Like I said, my objective here is for you to kind of see all the different pieces of Carlson survey that you may use. And in order to do that, it's kind of tough when you're trying to put a lesson together to use the same data set to show all these different commands. So I'm just going to be honest with you that I have massaged this data in some cases to make it a little bit better, in some cases to make it a little bit worse, just so that I can demonstrate the different parts of the software. And here's a good example. I have my point file broken down into 2 text files. You can see here, I've got it called just control only. You can see I have very nice and neat point numbers. That's not usually the case. And these are for my traverse shots. And then I have my corners nicely numbered, very convenient, for my property corners. As it turns out, we found all of them in the field, so it's going to work out nice. And then I have a second point file here, which is location and topo. And so I'm going to bring this in 2 parts. I'm going to bring this one in first, and then I'm going to bring this one. Is there any reason legitimately that you would break it into 2? No, it's just going to give me a chance to demonstrate some different things. So if you have any questions, I've told Kim to interrupt me. If you have any questions, whether there's a particular reason I do it a certain way, feel free to ask those as well. So we're going to start off bringing in this point file, and then we'll bring in this one. So setting up my data files, I'm going to create a new CRD file. So this is my point database. I will import points from a text file and click next. All right, so when I go through this wizard, it just asks me in one screen what I want to do next, and it takes me right to that next command. So I'm going to select that text file. And here, just because of the way my folders are organized, it comes up to the correct folder. I can see a preview of the file I want to import. I can see that preview here again. I can set up the different fields that I have in that point file. I am going to draw the points in the drawing using the draw locate points command next. And then I'm going to assign a point group. I'm going to call this control, just as a generic name for this set of points that will come back later and help me. And then I will pick OK. All right, so wizard tells me this has been done. I've told it I want to go to draw locate points next. Takes me here. So draw locate points is the generic command to draw points in your drawing. In this case, I have the points in the CRD file, so it's just drawing them from that file. I've got an option here to set the symbol, so I'll just leave it as the open circle. I can set a layer name for these points, and I do want to do this. And I think that's the only change that I want to make here. And I'm going to draw all the points. All right, so I'm going to go in and change. I have a hard time seeing the dark blue on the black background, so you can see those points have come in. If we look at my layer manager, you can see I have, several layers that came in from my template. And then all of these points are on this layer. If I freeze it, you can see it come back on. So now we're ready to just import that next set of points. And so again, this kind of introduces an error that I want to show you how to get around. So for the second list of points, I'll go under the points menu and import text and ASCII. So in some cases, this is going to look like I'm doing the same thing, but there's kind of one trick at the end where I'm going to end up with something I don't want. Select the text or ASCII file, and I'll pick my topo text file. I can see my preview here again. All right. Importantly, this is a second set of points, and I'm going to give that a different point group, and then kind of watch what doesn't happen here. So it's going to draw locate points. If you remember when I went through the wizard, when I picked OK here, it brought up that draw locate points dialog box, and it asked me for the symbol, it asked me for the layer. When you import points not through the wizard, it didn't give me any options. So this is exactly what I did not want, is for all my points to be on the same layer, which is what I've got. So this is where we can kind of see the beauty and the importance of having points separated out onto point groups. So every time I import points, there's a lot of different reasons you may want to use point groups. This is one. It just lets you quickly identify, points that you brought in at different times maybe. So what I can do here, since I have this separated out, I can just redraw my point group topo onto that new layer. So I'm going to go back to points, draw locate points. And now it's giving me the chance to change the point symbol. So I'm going to change this set of points to my X. Right here, I can change the layer, and we'll just put this on topo. And now I don't want to draw all, because if it draws every point on this layer, I've got the same problem, basically. So I'm going to use the draw point group button, and I want to redraw the topo point group points on that new layer. Couldn't even really see it here. But if we look in our list of layers, you can see I have those on different layers now. All right, so let's take a little closer look at my points. Let me find a file here. Okay, so here's my deed. So I've got a point of beginning with my known northing and easting, and then I have all of my deed calls. So what I want to do next is show you what's probably one of my favorite commands in the software, the enter deed description. It's very forgiving. This is a very simple example, but once we kind of go through this, I'll kind of explain why I like it so much. I'm not going to snap to anything. Well, say that. Yeah, I don't want that. Okay, so I've turned my object snap off. I'm just going to sketch in my boundary. So this would be my point of beginning basically, right? So 50 and 51, 52, 53, these are my corners. So that's generally my boundary. So when I enter this, this plat, I'm actually just going to enter all those calls starting at my POB and going clockwise this direction. But I'm not going to start here. I'm actually just going to pick a point in space and sketch it over here. This is one of those questions, why? Why wouldn't I start at the POB? There's no good logical reason not to, except that I want to show you how to use the translate command. And I can only do that if it's not in the right place. So we're going to sketch it over here. So throughout the software, there are, just like any CAD software, I guess, there are probably 6 different ways to do just about anything, particularly drawing in this polyline boundary. So I can enter polylines by line and direction, or by distance and direction. There's a bunch of different ways. But Carlson has this enter deed description, which is actually going to create a separate data file in addition to the line work that goes in the drawing. So this is a simple example, like I said. You will really appreciate this if you have ever had to key in a boundary line down a line table, and you have 30 rows of a line table and your eyes cross and you make mistakes and you enter the same one twice or you skip a line. Kind of picture yourself doing that and you will appreciate this command even more. All right, so we're going to enter deed description. This is the layer that my lines and curves are going to go on. Of course, I've just got lines. I've got a deed name, so I'm just going to leave it at lot 1 for our purposes here. It will draw the line work and create the polyline. I have points turned off. I tend to be protective of my points, so I would rather enter my polylines, make sure the polylines are correct before I set points on them, just because I know I'm apt to make a mistake. And then this is the data file, so it's going to store these boundary calls into a deed file called a PDD. All right, so pick the pointer point number. Where am I starting? I'm going to start here. And then the format that Carlson looks for is shown here. So it's QDD period MMSS. So a fun fact is that Q, even though it stands for quadrant, it can actually, there's 9 different options because we do have some old deeds. 1 through 4 are going to be your standard quadrants: northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest. You could put a 5 in there as a quadrant, and it's going to be an azimuth. So you could enter it as an azimuth. 6 and 7. Yep.
Sorry. Are these commands available if you run Carlson with Civil 3D as well?
They are, because Carlson, and I should have explained that, and I apologize for that. I'm running on top of IntelliCAD. This exact same package that I'm running can also be installed on top of any full AutoCAD. So that would include Civil 3D. And it just basically strips out the AutoCAD piece. And so Carlson would run on top of that. But yes, very good question. All good? All right, so so we have our 1 through 4 bearings, and then 5 would be an azimuth. 6, 7, 8, and 9 are some combination of turned angle left, turned angle right, deflection left, deflection right. I always have to look that up. So the first leg of my boundary is going to have a northeast bearing 65 degrees, 44 minutes, 47 seconds, 35.67 feet. And then we go southwest 49.3007, 197.58. And then southeast 52 degrees, 45 minutes, 14 seconds for 285.33. Southwest 6.2409, 297.74. Zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to build a mistake in here in a minute. Let's see. We've got southwest 70 degrees, 40 minutes, 56 seconds for 395.09. Let's see. Make sure I got the right one. All right, so this is going to be a northeast bearing. I think it's going to close me out. Oh, no, I've got one more, sorry. This is going to be a southwest 84, 57, 16 for 210, 12. I think that's right. All right, so let's say that you just bat finger it, your finger slips, you hit the 4, or let's say it's going to be a 1. You hit the 1 for your quadrant, and then you hit your enter key. Rather than trying to undo or go back, this is so easy to correct afterward and fix that I just suggest that you keep going. So it's not quite what I planned, right? But that's the end. I put everything in right except for the bearing and that angle. So I'm going to hit an E for exit. And then it makes fun of you at the end when you really mess up. So I had a nice closure of 1 in 10 feet. But again, picture, you know, boundary going along a creek, around a wetlands, what have you, anything that you're going to make a mistake on, you know, you just like for it to be easy to fix afterward, and this is. So I've got this in here, and I can process that deed file. So I'm going to process the deed file. There it is. I'm going to open that. There's my lot, and let's edit. And this is what I love, okay? So in the top, I get everything in a table that looks like an Excel file, and all surveyors and engineers, I think, love Excel files. And then I see the graphic below. If I click on any row up here, it highlights it in the graphic, and I can go fix the one that I want, that I need to fix. So you can see here where I accidentally hit that. And I can just put my degrees, minutes, and seconds in, and it fixes it. Now, maybe you completely left out a line. Well, you can just hit an add button and it adds a new one at the bottom. Let's say 200 feet, and I'm just going to put in that's fine, 45 degrees. So there's that line. You put it in at the right angle and the distance, and then you hit this button here to move it up the list, and it's kind of goofy looking. But you can see it just kind of, you can move it up to where it belongs. Okay. So I'll take it all the way back down. Maybe you put one in twice, you can just remove it. But this is where I wanted to be. I think that's good. I think that completes my boundary. So I'm going to pick OK. So let's double check it. That's not what I meant to do. Notice again here, I can change my starting, northing, and easting if I want, but I want to use the translate command, so I can show you that in a minute. Let's report that. All right, so I've got a little better closure. I can print this, I can print it to the screen, I can save it to a file. This is Carlson's kind of an enhanced notepad. It still looks like this in the drawing, so I need to redraw this. Label lines and arcs. What this command does is a command called auto annotate, and it lets me set up one labeling format for my lines and another one for my arcs. So you can see that's the way it's set up currently. I'll just accept that for now. We'll come back to it later. I'll save that change and exit. So there's my boundary. I'm going to erase this little sketch that I put in and we'll move on. So I'm ready now. I'm going to show you. This is where I'm kind of going to skip a step here in a minute. I'm just going to kind of swag this in, and we are going to add points to this polyline at the corners, and these will be our deed points. And then I'm going to move my deed boundary and the points over here to their actual POB coordinates. So I'll use a command under the COGO menu to create points from entities. This is a pretty slick little command. Actually, hang on, let me show you one thing I want to do. So remember that my property corners over here, I have these nicely numbered, 50, 51, 52, all the way around, I think, to 56, somewhere 56. So when I set this up, if we have time to do a deed correlation routine, I'm going to try to get my point numbers here to correspond with the field shot points. So when I create points from entities, I am going to, these are going to be my deed points. So I'm just going to pick another symbol. We will call these points deed. And then my starting point number, remember this was 0.50, so I want this point number to be 1050. And then I've got some options here on how to set the description. I'm going to keep this simple and just make my point descriptions for these points, deed. Entities to process, I've only got a polyline here, so I will pick OK, select here. And then let's kind of look around here. So you can see that where we didn't close exactly, we do have a duplicate point, kind of. So under points, I'll move point attributes with a leader. And I can pull this guy out here and this guy out here. For what I'm doing, I really don't need point 1057, so I will just go in and I'll erase that point. Let's do it from the screen, from both the drawing and the CRD file. All right. So I have point 1050, and where does that go? Where should 1050 be located? It should be located at those coordinates. All right, and so just to be clear, point 50 is just a field located, and it's not exactly at that coordinate either. So let's just list our points. Let's just list point 50. So there are the coordinates for 50. So when we move this over, it's going to be close, but not exactly. And again, that's where the deed correlation command comes in. It takes a few minutes, so we'll save that to the end if we have time. But for right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use a translate command to move the points plus the polyline over here to that POB coordinate. So under the points command, I'm going to adjust coordinates. Notice that you have several different ones here. So we've got translate, we've got rotate. The align command is that combination translate and rotate. This is, again, you can kind of tell this was done by people who've used it. When I go into translate and when I go into any one of those commands, this is the best button ever. undo last translate. So it's so easy to make a mistake and you have to undo and you're like, oh gosh, how many points moved? What did I do? You may be, half an hour down the road and making other edits before you realize that something went wrong. You can always come back in here and undo the last translation. So I love that. What am I going to translate? My original point is going to be my point 1050. So as soon as I hit my tab, you can see that it pulls the coordinates. My destination point is going to be my POB location. So I'll just enter those coordinates. 19081, okay. So again, this gives you the ability to translate using kind of any method you need. If you just know your delta north and your delta east, you can do it. I'm not changing my elevations. I've got this checkbox unchecked for process elevations. What range of points do I want to move? I'm just going to say maybe I don't exactly remember my point numbers, so I'm just going to give it a broad range. When I move these points, I would like to also translate the boundary that goes with it. Now I've got object linking turned on. So when I click OK, that command already knows what point. So now it's just prompting me for the objects to be translated. And it's kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but it already knows what points because I gave it that point range. When I select my polyline, it's going to translate the points, it translates the polyline, and the labels go with it, which is exactly how it should be. And so these are going to be close. There's going to be some difference between them. Keep saying this, but the deed correlation is how you can try to best fit that deed in there. But I've kind of got it where I want. I think I am at a point where I'm going to do a legal description, and then I think we're ready to kind of put a sheet together and start doing some labeling. So let's look. Let me get a quick save here. So we can do a legal description. So let me show you how this works. So I'm going to do it from my boundary polyline. I will click here. I think this is going to get a bad result, but let's see what it looks like. I'm going to click OK. So I had my deed points in there. I probably didn't want those. Okay, but you can kind of see what it came up with. So let's turn off. The reason it got that is because my deed points were turned on. So I think I turned them off. I did. Let's run our legal description again. Pick the same boundary polyline and pick OK. Okay, 2 and nothing. This legal description writer has a ton of controls in it. I'm going to go ahead and pick that boundary again. But notice under settings, so we just took the defaults. You can click through here. You can save all these settings. You can save them kind of with a, different details in it. So if you have to set up to record in different counties or different locales, you can have a standard settings file for each different location, and it'll just update this. So you can get very granular in how you want this worded. But if we look under the point button here, you can see that I have a tolerance of 0.1. So this is that, I told you that I kind of manipulated the data a little bit to make some errors bigger. So the error here is horrible. I need to set this to a foot. So proper surveying, this is not. I'm going to set this to 1 foot. because it's looking for that corner, that point close to a vertex so that it knows what corner it's going to. And so you can see as soon as I increase that tolerance, it was able to find that point in there. You can see how the capitalization, you're not going to get A or N in here. It doesn't understand anything, but it's capitalizing title case right now. Let me go in one more time and let's just look under the general button. And you can see just some of the verbiage that you can change. New line trigger word. Here's my case. It's a proper case, sorry. All right, so I'm going to cancel here. All right, so what do we have? Let me turn everything back on. And then I'm going to go in, let's just take a quick look at this layer inspector. So if you're an AutoCAD user, this is a layer walk. I think it's an Express tool, or maybe they embedded it now. But layer inspector lets me go through my list of layers. And as I click on any layer, hopefully you all can see that, it's isolating the entities on that layer. So there's my property. If I hold control, I can see more than one. So you can see what's in this drawing. Okay, so not a lot. We have points, but if I wanted to build a surface, I don't have any break lines drawn. I don't have any of my site details. None of my location work has been, none of the polylines have been drawn. So I am going to redraw everything. I'm going to freeze my boundary. That's the only thing I've really manually put in here. Okay. And then I'm just going to erase all this. I know that just doesn't sound right, but I'm going to erase those points. You can see the list of layers that I have. I'm going to purge all my layers. So the only thing that's in here now is that boundary. And then I'm going to switch over and I want to redraw all of that information. So all I have right now are points in my CRD file. And I want to use Carlson's draw field to finish feature. And I'm going to have it redraw all those points. And let's just take a quick look here. So real quickly, Carlson's field to finish is like, I'm assuming most of you have some experience in either Land Desktop or Civil 3D. Carlson's field to finish is going to be like a combination of description keys and automatic line work in the survey portion, okay? So based on a point's description, we can tell it to draw different entities. So you can see the entity type column I have here. So some of it is just with a symbol. Some of it will be 2D polylines. Some of it will be 3D polylines. Some will be 2D and 3D. So I'm going to reprocess all these points and have it draw my line work for me. 2D line work that will be shown on my drawings, and then 3D polylines for break lines for my surface. So everything ended up, well, mostly with the same color. But you can see this is a variation on a National CAD standard list of layers. If we go back and look at that layer inspector again, I've got buildings that were drawn. I have a ditch center line. I have a ton of layers. All my points are sorted out onto layers that start with V node, and I'm just holding control as I'm adding those so you can see they're all sorted out for me. My property line is still there. from where I did it earlier. I have a road center line and an edge of pavement, the one thing on a different color. I have tree symbols. Oops. Tree symbols. I have property corner symbols. I have a bunch of 3D polylines for my surface, and then the lone fire hydrant. We can also look at this in 3D. Let me just do that. I hit the wrong thing. Drawing viewer. There we go. Oh, I bet this is gonna, yeah, I keep getting that error. I've got some kind of a graphic card thing. Just have to do it twice. There we go. So here's my 3D viewer. I can tip this up. You can see my elevation range. I've got this exaggerated by 5 times now, so you can see these are my break lines. Right now, I'm ignoring 0 elevations, you can see here. If I uncheck that, that's my 2D 0 elevation polylines that I'll use in my drawing. So I am set up here to build a surface. I think I've got time to do that. I'm gonna try to sneak this in here. So under surface, if I do triangulate and contour, I am gonna have an error here. Let me figure out the best way to explain it. I guess we'll just go through it. So I will write my 10 file. So this is my surface name. This is my EG, existing ground. I'm going to create 1 foot contours on this layer. I'm going to label my contours. It's going to filter out and only use points and 2D polylines and 3D polylines, and I will pick OK. Put a window around everything. And it seems like it worked okay, except for this. So I have something going on. Let me explain. It seems like it found the boundary. It knew to exclude some points, and it happens to be these are points I wanted it to exclude. Why did it exclude those? Well, Carlson has a setting called non-surface points and entities. If I double click on this, you can see that my hub, based on my field to finish settings, has been tagged as a non-surface point. All of my other corners, I've got a bunch of stuff in here. Let's move this out. Okay, if I double click on this, my EIPs, non-surface. Deed points, non-surface. So even though I selected everything here, it knew to filter these out because they were non-surface points. So what happened
Jennifer?
here? Yes.
Sorry. Is it possible to draw a surface without using field to finish?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I could have done it without using that field to finish. It would have just used the points and I could have manually drawn in 3D polylines. Absolutely. Let me know if you've got any follow-ups on that.
Thank you.
So you can see here, if I double click on hub, we've already seen that anything with a hub description is already tagged as a non-surface, but this is not a standard description. 5 equals 1, that's not a standard description. So field to finish doesn't know that it's supposed to tag points with that description. I have to manually do that. Now, when I see that, I also remember that I had a point up in here somewhere that, oh boy, I gotta find it. There's another point that 6 equals 2. So that should be a non-surface point as well. And so I would uncheck that. So now I've tagged those as non-surface. If I go back to triangulate and contour, I'm going to overwrite this surface. So it's going to ask me if I want to overwrite it and erase the previous contour entities. It knows to automatically disregard anything that's non-surface. And so we get a much better result. So it knew to exclude this. Now, non-surface, that functionality is built into field to finish. If you look here, we saw that deed was a non-surface. It's just a checkbox. So any descriptions, any field codes that you would want to exclude from a surface, you can just put a checkbox there. If it's got that random description of 5 = 1, it's not going to be non-surface. But you can set that up. There's also a manual way for the person that asked whether you have to use field to finish for some of this. It can be done manually, pretty much everything. So if you want to manually select points that need to be excluded from any surfaces, you can just go right here and tag non-surface points. If I look at my report, you're going to see here's the list of things that are being excluded. So there's my 5 = 1 and 6 = 2. So I like that. That's pretty, to me, that's pretty smart. But I've got a surface model now. You can see the contours that were drawn. If I look at my 3D viewer now, I can actually look at the 10 file that I created. So there it is. We can look at it up. And I'm not seeing my grid lines. If I go to settings, I can actually just have it display those triangle edges or not. Okay, let's start labeling a little bit. I'm going to turn all my layers back on. So let me, under annotate, I can get most of my kind of the pieces that I'm going to put on my sheet. So I can draw a north arrow. I'm just going to pop one in here just so I know which way is up. Now I'm going to use a command under Carlson's view to do a twist screen. So they have, this is another command that they've enhanced and made it easier to use. It does use the D-view twist, which I've never been a great fan of for a lot of reasons. But Carlson makes it so nice, and they've built into their twist screen and their twist commands things that fix all my complaints. So I'm going to twist the screen because I want this. This is a boundary line along a highway. I want that to be horizontal on my sheet. Select a line, polyline, or text. Click here, hit my enter key, and you can see it's been rotated. My crosshairs have been adjusted. So what's the problem? So I'm going to show you, we have these points in here that they're no longer upright. And so this is one of the commands that Carlson's built in that makes me like this. It's not going to work well for anything that I've got those automatic leaders pulled out, so it won't fix that. But if I look down through here, that word twist means a certain thing to Carlson. So twist point attributes, when I hit that command, the attributes are going to be the symbol, the point number, the elevation, the description labels. And I want to rotate all of those based on the twist screen angle. So I can just hit enter. Attributes to twist, all of them. Relative to the twist screen is 0. I'll do screen pick, and I'm going to type all command. And I'm going to do a refresh or regen. And you can see those points have all been rotated to where they're upright again now. My contour labels are still upside down. I may need to fix that. If I want to fix that, I can just go back and recontour everything. The surface is built. I don't have to, redo any of that. And you can see that's all been fixed. All right, let's take a look at some more labels. So again, my points did not do well. They did not come through that very well. I am going to freeze my contours. Actually, I'm going to instead, let's just isolate my boundary with the labels. So the labels are upside down. So let's just take another look. Remember, we did that as part of our draw deed file earlier, but we're going to go back now to auto annotate and update some of those settings. So auto annotate, we talked about this earlier. This is our current setting. If I want to maybe just relabel everything to where I've got the angle above and the distance below, I'm going to switch the distance to below now, and I will put it one row from the line I'm labeling. I can pick OK, select here, and you can see that's a polyline. I clicked on the polyline and it redid everything in one fell swoop. Maybe I don't like that. Maybe I just want to label one leg of it a different way. And I can also do that under angle distance. I've got all these different formats. Pick here. Once it's labeled, I've also got the ability to just move that label out with a leader. Something like that. So this is very flexible. They've got a ton of neat little commands in here where you can, label an outer boundary differently with its component distances for like a subdivision lots, things like that. Realize I'm running out of time, so I've got my buildings here. Let's actually do our, did you have a question, Kim?
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, no problem. I heard you.
Is the surface created with Carlson compatible with Civil 3D, or would there be additional steps for engineers to be able to use it?
Land XML is the wonderful tool that lets you create generic data files, basically for any program from any program. So Civil 3D will import and export land XML files. Carlson does have some import routines, but I would encourage everybody to get used to the land XML. It's been around since Land Desktop. So I would always try to import and export through land XML because it's going to be an exact replica of whatever it is you created. So I would use that. Happy to follow up with anybody on that. But land XML is in every Carlson program. It was in Land Desktop, it's in Civil 3D. It takes the information beyond the drawing. DWG is completely compatible from Carlson. So Carlson doesn't necessarily have all the dynamic abilities of Civil 3D, but what Carlson does do is every entity is a generic CAD entity. So you could literally export or just save this DWG, and it could be saved back to an AutoCAD 9, like I talked about earlier, DXF file, and it's going to be a one-to-one. It goes into all construction equipment, anything like that. Land XML is the universal transfer routine. So Kim, let me know if there's a follow-up on that. Hopefully I answered that.
Would you have to export the surface created in Carlson and then import it into CAD?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
And that will work not just surfaces, but that's points, it's description keys or field to finish, it's surfaces, it's center lines, cross sections, profiles, parcels, storm networks, all that will go land XML in or out of any of these programs. Let me just do a quick area label. So I've got area bylines and something, lines and arcs. So I can customize this under area defaults. You can see if I want to add my lot description, I can put that in here. I can double click and I can put a prefix. I can do all this customization, acres. If I don't want it spelled out, I can do AC. I can change my precision, things like that. And relabel. Just something like that. So I've got buildings here. This is a special little kind of a sub menu. This is classic Carlson. So it has its own set of defaults. It's just these 3 neat little commands that are very handy. You know, what I try to focus on a lot of times on this stuff, I try to show you things that will save picks and clicks. And this is definitely one of those. So survey text has 3 different little commands in there. So the building dimensions lets me do this very quickly and easily. Now it doesn't have a lot of formatting options. I can't just easily pull it out with a leader, but it gets you that very quickly. Another survey text is like offset dimensions. So the picks and clicks this saves, it immediately puts me into an endpoint object snap. And then it puts me in a perpendicular object snap. And it creates that. I can format that with 2 arrows or what have you. Endpoint, perpendicular. So just very easy little things like that. Almost there. All right, let me turn my layers back on. Actually, let's turn everything back on. I don't know that I want everything. Under settings, Carlson has a very generic, very rough little title block that we can put in. Paper space or model space. So there's my border. It does have attributes built in here. So if I put it in the wrong place. So I can enter that data. These can be customized. You can put it in there to make it just that easy to enter your borders, your title block. We have a bar scale, 3 different styles. I can put that here. And then kind of my little finale, I'm going to show you a legend. So legends is one of those things that's just a pain in the neck. It just seems to take time, and I think it just kind of annoys everybody. I'm going to turn off my point layers. Let's see what else. Let me turn off my 3D polygons. And then everything else. Let me show you this neat little thing, how Carlson does a legend. So like everything, it creates an external file, but this is something you can save and go back to. I want to add legend items from my drawing. So I will just put a window around all this. And here we go. So I'm going to sort these. So you can see it pulls out unique line types and layers. It's taken the layers, or the description is the layer. I'm going to delete, I'm going to remove the continuous line types. I've got my contours. So for instance, I can double click on this and say, This is an existing contour. Let me just save this and then let's draw it. And then I'll show you how to take it one extra step to save a few more picks and clicks. But just very easily, you've got that. Now, rather than using these symbols and having to go in and modify that manually, let me show you what else you can do. We had field to finish. In my field to finish file, let me show you. In my field to finish file, I have things like this, where that was the raw description, but I had a full description here. So Carlson's legend command will let me take advantage of having that built into field to finish. And I've got this button here to set the description in my legend by the field to finish description. And I'm just going to go and select my FLD file. It set 6 descriptions for me. Let's save it, and then I will draw it once again. And that's it. A lot of formatting stuff. That can all be fixed. I did it. It's 1 minute after. I almost did it. I think that's all I had. I'm happy to take questions. Don't know if we got everything during the session or not, but I'm happy to hang out.
Thank you, Jennifer. I don't see any additional questions.
All right.
So thank you for
Yeah, you bet.
joining us today. We appreciate it.
You bet.
And thanks everybody for joining us for today's webinar. We'll send a recording of it in a little while so you can go back and revisit anything you need. And I think that's it for today. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye.